Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at titosvodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
Save big money on storage solutions at Menards. Versatube offers thousands of steel carport and shelter options to protect your car, boat, or yard equipment. Their quick-slip frame connections provide easy assembly and are available in 22 steel roofing and siding colors. Save big on Versatube storage solutions at Menards, America's #1 home improvement retailer for customer satisfaction according to J.D. Power. Visit jdpower.com for details and menards.com for deals.
Save big money at Menards.
This is Jessica Knoll, host of the new series Back in Crime. If you're a follower of true crime, you're probably familiar with some of the most shocking stories from our history. Horrific tragedies like the Columbine Massacre and notorious criminals like Charles Manson. But what if we were to turn back the hands of time and relive these events as they unfolded in real time? Follow along each week as we take a fresh look at crimes from the past. Back in Crime is available now.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, what happened to a man who disappeared after leaving a Georgia nightclub in 2007? Is his body at the bottom of a dark lake? We'll review the podcast Drowning Creek. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of the These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
Cat ladies of the world unite.
And
right?
finally,
Yes.
our resident doubting Thomas, author of the City Trilogy, host of Rip Current, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
Tell me, what is Rip Current about? Just give people, in case they missed the trailer.
Yeah, okay, I'll give them the skinny. The way I talk to my friends and strangers on the street that I run into is I say, how many times do you think a woman has tried to assassinate a U.S. president in 250 years of U.S. history?
I know the answer, but I won't spoil it.
Yes, usually they can come up with one maybe, and sometimes they 50. But the answer is actually two, and they happen 17 days apart. In September of 1975, the first was Lynette Squeaky Fromm, who was one of Charles Manson's followers. And the other was a woman named Sarah Jane Moore, who was a 5 times divorced housewife who became, through a succession of things, became an informant for the FBI in the violent San Francisco radical underground. And she was an informant for about 18 months and became increasingly imperiled and was on the FBI payroll up until the day that she took a shot at Ford. So anyway, it's basically the story of these two women and sort of their place in sort of the end of the 60s revolutionary politics, Charles Manson. So they both have crazy stories.
What is the meaning behind the title Rip Current? Is there a deeper meaning there?
Well, the idea was that, well, one is just so that I can do the next season if it happens on something that's not very similar. But the basic idea was that sort of the currents of history and how they affect different things that happen. So the idea was that these two women get sort of caught up in the changes that are happening in the late 60s, early 70s, and that kind of influences their actions that eventually are trying to kill Gerald Ford, perhaps the most innocuous president that we've had in the last
Gerald
150 years. Yeah, exactly. It is. It's like the logo is a picture of Ford right after one of the assassination attempts. He's kind of ducking, and people are like, is anybody going to recognize? Does anybody know who that guy is?
Well, congratulations on this, because we've been talking about this off the air for months and we've been waiting for it to come out, and we couldn't say anything, but we're so thrilled for you and your success.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it'll be a success.
Well, just don't be such a big success that you're leaving the show, because that would really...
Don't leave the mothership. That's what they say.
Do not be the Peter Gabriel of
exactly.
the crime writers. Yeah.
Well, do we have a Phil Collins that we could replace him with if he is
Phil's
Peter
in the
Gabriel?
band.
No, I know.
Phil was already in the band.
I know. So will someone do double duty and just become them and
Don't
Toby?
be the David Lee Roth.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We may not find Sammy Hagar.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Not that you'd want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think Livy would have to be. She's the Phil Collins in this.
Yeah.
She is the Phil Collins in this. So, Kevin.
Yeah.
This is Thursday's show.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking about next Monday?
So on Monday, we're going to be talking about the podcast Noble.
Oh, that's like the #1 podcast for a long time.
Yeah.
It's like the Tortured Poets department of podcasts.
But where do we get a hold of it?
Uh-oh. We're going to take that mother down?
I don't know. We might build
Do we know what this is about?
It's about hundreds of bodies found in Noble, I forget the state.
People are enjoying it on our Facebook group. That's all I know.
Nothing more enjoyable than finding hundreds of bodies.
If you think Body Brokers was nuts,
all right,
get ready for Noble.
Laura, I have a quick question for you before we begin.
Yes.
As we tape this, so when it airs, it will have happened, but it hasn't happened yet. As we tape this, there's about to be a UFO festival in your town. Why does your town have so many festivals?
My town has so many festivals because we're quaint as fuck. We have a festival for every season. We have the Alewife Festival commemorating the fish that is on our town seal. We have the Smelt and Eel Fry. We have the Festival of Trees. We have the Independence Festival. And now the Exeter UFO Festival happens over Labor Day weekend every year. This one, honestly, out of all the festivals, brings the most people into town and the most quirkiness.
Yeah.
Do not forget the Chili Festival, where you almost poisoned everybody in Exeter with
beer and chili.
old moose meat that you weren't supposed to serve the public.
Yep. That's beer and chili. The Lit Festival. So many festivals.
The Lit Festival. We have lots of festivals. It's just, we're like Stars Hollow and the Gilmore Girls. There's a festival for everything.
Did you say there was a Smell and Eel Festival?
A Smelt and Eel. Yeah. The Smelt and Eel Fry. Smelt. People like to eat the smelts. It's an old time thing in Exeter. I have not ever eaten the smelts.
The smelt is not good.
There was this guy that used to fish for smelts, and he'd be like trying to drop off these like paper bags of smelts on my porch. He's like, they're so delicious. And I'm like, I don't want any smelts. You don't even need to debone them. You just eat the bones. I'm like, I'm good, man. I'm good.
I had smelt in Ireland. They like serve them and they're like really salty, and they put them in like this little paper thing, and like as a bar snack. And everyone's like, "This is so good," and they're covered with salt and stuff. And I had one, and I was like, "Do you guys know what good means?" It's not this. Yeah, definitely not.
Did you say Irish cuisine?
No, the food in Dublin is actually good now, but like the smelt was not.
The
part
smelt
of it.
was not good. I don't know what the preferred food is at the UFO festival, but I will report back on that.
All right. I can't wait. Is it going to be UFO legs? Fried UFO legs?
It could be anything. And I will be there.
Alien oysters?
Oh, no, Kevin. Like Rocky Mountain oysters?
Or they could be alien oysters.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe. I don't like oysters.
But you'd rather testicles? Okay.
There was a trivia question on this week's Civics 101 about where there was an alien encounter in Middle America and Close Encounters in the Third Kind. A town that was used for a long period of time for movie and television and pop culture settings because it was considered the most middle America of every town in the United States because of an anthropological study that was done by two racists in the 1920s. Do you know what town that was?
Springfield?
Muncie, Indiana.
Oh.
Fun fact.
Okay.
All right. Yes.
Sorry, Muncie.
Sorry, Muncie.
Still love you.
You guys ready to talk about the podcast we're going to be talking about?
Let's do it.
All right. Leading off.
The problem with this case is not just that we don't have a body. It's that we don't have a crime scene. We don't have any physical evidence of death. We don't have a mass of blood. We don't have a murder weapon. We don't have fingerprints.
In 2007, 18-year-old Justin Gaines left an Atlanta area nightclub, got into a black car, and disappeared. 7 years later, Dylan Glass told police he took part in Justin's murder at an after-hours party, and his mother helped clean it up. He was never charged and later recanted his statement.
Could you imagine sitting in a level 5 prison, man, facing a life sentence for somebody you never really met, man, and listening to the whole world talk bad about you and want you dead? That shit hurts. That shit hurts, man. I told them people that I never knew that boy.
Over the years, tips about Justin's fate and his whereabouts have led investigators to nothing but dead ends. Theories include a robbery, a jealous boyfriend, and a drug debt to the Mexican cartel. But podcast host Sean Kipe uncovered a promising lead that Justin's body was placed in a toolbox and submerged in Lake Lanier.
This is like 2-inch visibility.
If that.
You might be able to see like this close.
Wow. If we see anything, we'll dive it and hopefully just find it and be able to feel it. But we won't be able to see anything around it.
It's basically going to be a lot of searching, and it might just be all searching, but we don't know until we get out here and start looking.
In the podcast Drowning Creek from Wavland, Kipe chases down witnesses, suspects, and possible motives for the disappearance of Justin Gaines. Along the way, he uncovers new clues that might be helpful to the investigation. Kipe also lands an exclusive interview with a man believed to have information that can break open the case. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from Drowning Creek, so if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So, Kevin, this podcast is dense, yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it feels like it's more dense than it probably needs to be, given, sort of the skeleton of the crime here and the potential like solid leads. At least that's how it's landing to me, the kind of dense. Sean does, a decent job like signposting, like, we're going to come back to this guy or we're going to visit this thing later. But still, I found myself sort of lost in the narrative at times.
Yeah. So, Laura, Kevin just said he found himself lost in the narrative a couple of times. I did too.
Yep.
And he said that he thought there was a decent job of signposting. I did not find that. Right. But this is a case where it seems like maybe some traction was made by the end because of the podcast. It does seem potentially solvable, or maybe like it was solved and like nothing happened. What are your thoughts there?
So I'm going to be totally honest. I'm not totally sure what was solved at the end of this. However, I did look this up to see some information about this podcast and saw people that were very excited doing a GoFundMe because there was apparently enough new leads to gain some traction and some momentum. So I think in that regard, this podcast kind of re-energized and got the word out about this case in a way that was very validating for Justin's family and friends and people that needed some closure, and just felt like we've had this like old retired PI guy working on this his own all this time, and now we're getting more attention. Like maybe this is going to lead somewhere. So I felt like that sounds like a positive that came from this.
Yeah. So, Toby, this podcast does go to a lot of places, though, right? He does follow a lot of different threads.
It does. And I don't know if that's a positive, really, because there's a lot of threads that don't really lead anywhere. There's like a digression about Israel Keys at one point. That just seems like a crazy shot in the dark. Like Dylan's just like trying to deflect in any possible way. Another one is divers, where they think they might be able to find the locker that's got Justin's body in it underwater. And they kind of have these clues about it's across from these stands that were built for some Olympic event. And they send the divers down. And then there's this like weird, like it seemed like it was like 5 minutes. It was probably shorter, where they talk about how dangerous it's going to be to go down there, and they kind of lose touch with the diver. And it's like, oh, we got really scared and we couldn't reach him and all this stuff. Oh, and then he popped up and everything was fine.
Do you read me?
We all waited for any kind of response from Jeremy. And again, nothing.
Can you hear me? Over.
We waited and waited, now becoming concerned for Jeremy's safety.
Do you read me? Copy.
It was just kind of a weird thing, because the whole time I'm like, if this guy actually dies, this is a really very, very strange way of like covering it. So I assume he's going to pop up. There were just things like this where it was like, and we do this, and we do this, and we do this. And then in the end, nothing really happens. I didn't like count up the amount of time you spent kind of following these red herrings, but there were several of them. And in a podcast that was kind of confusing to begin with, this didn't make it any less confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the best sort of part for me was when, Sean was talking to his producer sort of about like their feelings on the case. And then you're right, they go on this dive mission. And right, there's this real danger and suspense. But I felt like there was like more narration than was necessary for that moment. So it ended up being like a lot of telling and not enough showing. Because this, was a naturally dramatic moment, but I felt like it got stepped on a little bit there by, trying to explain how everybody's feeling and what's, I think less would have been more there. But I think that the best parts of the podcast happen to be when they're out there doing some kind of investigation more than just, talking to folks on the phone. That's all necessary. I mean, I know that.
So you didn't mind the running down of the leads?
Well, I mean, I'm okay. I'm going to give props to Sean for his investigative reporting. He truly did run down every lead. And that was probably to the benefit of the investigation, but maybe a detriment to the podcast, right? I mean, in this case, they felt less like clues and more like doing due diligence. Like, okay, let's just check that off because you just never know. I mean, props for like finding the blonde in the car, right? Landing an interview with Dylan Glass, and locating the anonymous caller from the tip line. Like, none of those are easy feats, but really, how valuable is a tip from a woman who says her daughter got murder information from MySpace? Right? Is that like a big twist to the investigation? Or is this just like, well, this is another thing we have to eliminate. And so going along with that, sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. For some reason, this is not landing for me.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that I want to say about that. One is there's a difference between reporting and then producing what you want to put out in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Reporting just means gathering your information. Like, that's the journalism part. I'm reporting the story. I am going and getting stuff. And I watch people do this at my job all the time. Like, I watched Jason Moon make Bear Brook Season 2. I watched him make YDC Project. He reported a ton of shit that did not make it into either one of those projects. There's a ton of shit that should not have made it into this. And it's like, Sean thought everything he reported needed to be in here. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Like, sometimes you can find stuff in your reporting that like is not valuable or is not interesting or goes nowhere. And if it goes nowhere, like, sometimes we shouldn't be hearing about it. Or if you fact check it and it doesn't work, like, don't include it. Like, that's not valuable. We talked about this a couple weeks ago with In the Dark Season 3, that podcast that Madeline does such a great job of condensing side roads into like a sentence or sometimes whole characters into a paragraph so that we understand what happened, but we're not belaboring it. And this podcast almost does the opposite, where it blows up a tiny thing into way too much, where I'm like, I don't understand why I'm listening to this. Maybe it's going somewhere. And then I find out it didn't. And I'm like, I can't believe I just had to listen to this long thing about this thing that didn't go. The boat ride is a great example of that. It felt very David Ridgeny to me, like the dog search in the first season of Someone Knows Something. And the other thing that I wanted to say about that, and you sort of alluded to it, Kevin, with the narration, is this is not a voice thing. This is a narration style thing. Mm. It sounded like Sean was reading a book out loud. There was no inflection in any of the narration to differentiate when there was action, when there was exposition, when there was deep thought, when there was reflection. It was all the same. It was very easy to get lost. Am I supposed to be learning something? Am I supposed to be feeling something? Am I supposed to be... It was just very, very easy to get lost. And it's an editing thing, but it's also a performance thing that just wasn't really hitting it for me. So those were my sort of concerns about the structure of it and the denseness of it.
Just quickly on that, Rebecca, it felt like a lot of the writing felt to me like if I was reading like a true crime book from the 90s, it felt like that kind of writing, but that didn't necessarily for me translate to the audio world. Like when they were first describing Justin, and it was just like, Justin was a freshman.
And this was the first time he'd lived away from his parents. As any college freshman is, Justin was full of hope and excitement, even if he hadn't quite figured out what it was he wanted to do with his life.
This sounds like any true crime book that I would have read, but it loses me when you're reading that, like you were saying, Rebecca, as opposed to telling the story in a more interactive way that's a little bit more engaging.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about like what should stay, what should go. And while the episodes were short, the first was like 45 minutes, all the other ones were like 30 minutes. It feels like another podcast that needed to have like a certain number of episodes so things get stretched. Like it feels like it needed for, commercial reasons to be 9 or 10 episodes. And so there are some paths that I felt like weren't worth the time that was allotted. Like, you said, when the main suspect says, oh no, it actually was a serial killer. So, let's go follow up on that. Or it was the Mexican cartel. It's like the kid didn't even smoke marijuana. Would he really have run up such a big debt with the Mexican cartel that they got to kill him? Like, you're not going to run up a debt when you join us on Patreon because it's very affordable.
Yes,
and you can join us at different levels. By the way,
business section time.
Yeah, we always need to thank you for supporting us because you keep us going. You give us the ability to continue to do all the extra things that we do, and without you, we can't do that. We reward you by giving you hopefully some content that you really like. You can support us at many different levels. If you join us at the leading off level, you can get the Crime Writers on after show. You can also get Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, our advice podcast called Married with Podcast, and special bonus things like Rebecca's Readathon looking at the Karen Reed case.
So interesting.
If you join us at the Bricker scale level, just $1 more, $1 more, you get an exclusive podcast from Laura Bricker. It's Leave It to Bricker, where she solves mysteries, or at least mysteries to her, in her quaint AF town of Exeter, New Hampshire. If you join us at the Let's Do What We Do level, you can get episodes of Crime Writers on early and ad-free. We thought that maybe you wouldn't like this business section, but you, ad-free motherfuckers, told us, no, keep the business section in.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. So we said, yes, this is what you want. Okay, you can have that. And also, if you support us at the Deep Dive level, you can be part of Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club recording. You can watch it when he recorded. You can take part in the chat or even jump in if you really want. Toby's next book that he will be covering is called
The Wager by David Gran.
Yeah, The Wager. All right, so everyone's got to get that book and bone up for the next deep dive. Other ways you can help us out, be part of the community, join us on our Facebook group.
Yes, it's awesome.
Yeah. Have you heard of Facebook? Anybody got Facebook?
Only 2 billion people.
Right?
I am never on the Facebook. Never. I'm not on it right now at all.
Oh, well, I don't know if that's a good way to promote our group, to say, well, Laura spent too much time vaping to get onto Facebook, but you can do that. Or you can just sign up for our newsletter. It comes out on Thursdays. Go to crimewriterson.com, leave us your email. You'll get all sorts of cool behind-the-scenes stuff. Now, we also have an Amazon storefront where you can see some of our favorite things. If you shop there, we earn commission on qualified purchases. Doesn't cost you anything. Just helps us out a little bit. Rebecca, tell us, what are this week's Crime Writers on Amazon recommendations?
All right. I have 2 things that they go together. You ready? Mm-hmm. The Squirrel Solution 200 Squirrel-Proof Bird Feeder, which has been giving us hundreds of hours of bird watching pleasure all summer. And you have to get the fancy bird food to go with it, which is the KT Wild Bird Food for fancy, colorful birds. It's the one with all the fruit and nuts in it. Mm-hmm. It's like a buffet. It's the nut and fruit bird food. It's like, Kevin, you have to admit our bird situation has been lit this year. It's been incredible.
Absolutely has. And Toby Ball, what are your listener-inspired Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations?
Well, I think I can actually even identify which listener inspired this particular one, because I think her name is Catherine Mallory. But Ecolution patented microwave popcorn popper with temperature-safe glass, 3-in-1, lid measures some strange word, kernels. I thought it said Kemmels. But that doesn't make any sense. 3-in-1 lid measures kernels and melts butter made without BPA dis.
Wow.
Well, I don't want BPA dis in my popcorn popper.
That ruins it. Definitely. And then I've got another one too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this is a good one too. Ontel Battery Daddy Smart Battery Organizer Storage Case with Tester Stores and protects up to 150 batteries, clear locking lid, as seen on TV, smart.
I love As Seen on TV.
Yep.
That's my favorite section at Walmart.
Who needs 100 batteries at the ready? Are these for preppers? You don't need 100 batteries for your remote control and flashlights and other sundry devices?
Yeah, it didn't say who it was for necessarily.
Okay. So you can shop us first by going to amazon.com/shop/crime writers on. That's where we are. We earn commissions on qualified purchases.
All right, Kevin, before we end the business section, I have to ask, do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Heather Webb and Jennifer Lilly. Bless you.
Bless you, Heather. Bless you, Jennifer. Bless you to everybody who supports us on Patreon. Bless you to everybody who doesn't and listens to this business section anyway. We really appreciate all of you. All right, Kevin, I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now. Should I do that?
Do that.
Kevin, who's
Yes.
sponsoring us right now?
Okay, we're brought to you by Quince.
Quince.
Yeah, hey, like we're into fall right now, and it's back to school, and so all those short shorts, tank tops, all those, cool linen clothes that
Yes.
would be, those are all going in the closet. You got to get ready for.
It's cashmere sweater time.
It's cashmere. If you're going to go out and get decorative gourds,
Yes.
miniature decorative gourds.
Decorative gourd season.
Yes, that's right. You got to shift your wardrobe. Luckily, Quince offers timeless and high-quality items that you'll adore, ensuring your wardrobe stays fresh and you don't blow your budget. And remember, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
Yes, they sure are. I love Quince so much, Kevin.
Yeah.
I was actually shopping on Quince earlier today on my phone while I was editing something. There's something I want so badly.
Tell me.
It's a cashmere cardigan. Of course it is. It's so cute.
But does it break the bank?
No, of course it doesn't break the bank.
Then I'll allow it.
Oh,
I will allow it.
Thanks for allowing it.
Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, along with premium fabrics and finishes. How awesome is that?
Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials, like a cropped cashmere sweater. Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime.
This podcast is supported by FX's English Teacher, a new comedy from executive producers of What We Do in the Shadows and Baskets. English Teacher follows Evan, a teacher in Austin, Texas, who learns if it's really possible to be your full self at your job while often finding himself at the intersection of the personal, professional, and political aspects of working at a high school. FX's English Teacher is now streaming on Hulu. All new Mondays on FX.
Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at titosvodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
Save big money on everything for your next painting project at Menards. Dutch Boy DuraClean Exterior Paint is a paint and primer in one that's available in thousands of color options. It's formulated to resist dirt, mildew, and fading. Save big on Dutch Boy Exterior Paints at Menards, America's #1 home improvement retailer for customer satisfaction, according to J.D. Power. Visit jdpower.com for details and menards.com for deals.
Save big money at Menards.
Toby, question for you.
Yes.
When somebody is talking to you, can you tell whether or not they are telling the truth or not?
I can, but few other people can.
I think that's a lie.
Are you a human lie detector?
No, I don't think people can. So there's just a few things where Sean has me kind of scratching my head because it's things that I feel have been proven again and again to be just the wrong way of looking at things. So there's a point at which he's having a hard time because he thinks Leon and Dylan sound equally truthful. And I'm just that's not the test, is whether they sound truthful. Get some evidence. These guys are both career criminals, basically, or at least they certainly come across that way. So of course they're going to be able to lie convincingly. That's part of the deal. And then there was another one where he's talking about how he's wary about some lie detector readings because he thinks these teenagers who took it and Leon are scared when they take the lie detector, so that might have messed with their results. Like everybody's fucking scared when they take the lie detector, either because they're guilty and they're worried they're going to get caught, or you're innocent and you're worried the lie detector is going to somehow think that you're lying and that you're going to be implicated in something you're not.
And why are we using lie detectors? They're not fucking admissible. Like, why all this focus on the lie detectors?
There's a whole fucking section of this podcast. This made me wild. There's a whole section of this podcast about wrongful confessions, where they go to like this expert on wrongful confessions, who's like really well known, by the way, and go to this whole side thing about how it could possibly be that Dylan Glass could have given this wrongful confession, right? And they get into the science of it and how it could have happened or whatever. And then they're like, but then he had passed 2 polygraphs. And then there's nothing said about the fact that polygraphs are total and complete fucking bullshit.
No, but it seems like all the investigators are like, oh, this changes things.
But it
right?
What decade are they living in?
Yeah.
Dude, you can clench your butt cheeks and pass a polygraph. Like, literally everybody knows that. Like, that's a trick that literally everybody knows, right, Laura?
I actually didn't know that, so now I'm going to be prepared when I have to do a polygraph.
Just clench your butt cheeks.
Clench my butt cheeks.
Yep, that's the trick.
But it's not a binary, like, ding, you're lying. It's like these levels of...
anxiety.
Well, what do they say of deception or whatever? You know, they're just like evasiveness. You know, it's
they mean nothing.
That's why they're one of the few junk sciences that is inadmissible in courts. So if they can't even use that as evidence, I wonder why they're like, oh no, he had this great confession back in the day with all sorts of details, kind of corroborated by his fucking mom who cleaned up the crime scene, but. Oh, no, I'm making that up. There's a serial killer that probably did it, and I passed a lie detector test. Twice. So let me out.
But Laura, he said that he did all these other crimes, but, not this one.
Yeah, so he knows how to work the system, man. Sorry, because he's definitely got it down where he's in federal prison. He's a drug offender. He's had drug offenses on his record. He's got charges of conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, assault, gang activity. But he's got the thing down where he's like, well, I know I'm not a good guy, but you know what? Sometimes there's things that I didn't do. And yeah, I shot these people. I'm paying my dues, but I didn't do that. And I'm like, you know what? Good for you. I'm glad that they've been teaching theater class in your particular, I don't know. But no, seriously, I mean.
Laura, he shot the sheriff, but he didn't shoot the deputy.
Shot the sheriff. Yeah. But I think that was what was frustrating to me, was listening to that interview with Dylan and then like reading about him and just being like, okay, there are legit. And believe me, we all know I am a defense investigator. I am all about wrongful confessions, wrongful convictions.
Oh, I think no one did it. That's all my whole thing is. Kevin's always like, how come you think that person did it? I'm like, because I just do.
But in this case, I did not hear anything that really made me feel like, oh yeah, Dylan Glass totally made a false confession and here's why he did it. No, I didn't. But also there was just so many weird details in this whole story that I just was like, but I was confused because they were so dense. So I can't remember some of those weird details. But there was a lot of weird shit going on, especially with like the moving crime scene of this guy being killed.
Yeah.
Like I kind of felt like it started and ended at the same place.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're going to hear a lot about Dylan and then they kind of lay out like in the first couple episodes, I think they kind of lay out this theory about Justin going over to Leon's and there being a tussle and him getting choked out and then getting killed and being taken off. And by the end, it seems to come back to that same, like that seems like the most likely thing that they have. Like they've gone down all these other roads and they've come back to this same story and maybe I misinterpreted something or whatever. But then when it got to that, I'm like, what's the arc that we're going through? Because it seems less like an arc and more like a circle where you go around in a big circle and you end up where you started. And then again, I was wondering, were there details that were different? Like when we got to the end that were significant? But it just seemed like what started off as the narrative kind of ended up as the most likely narrative.
Yeah.
Which made me wonder what like the whole rest of it was all about.
Toby, isn't this really, what really occurred to me as I was listening to this is this is a where is the body story, not a how did he die story, right?
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about Someone Knows Something the first season because it was like that was really about finding the kid, right? Like, where is the kid? What happened to him? But it was all really about finding the kid. And really, like, where is this guy? Is he in a well? There's like a lot of searching.
Oh, yeah, there's empty wells all over the place.
Right.
Empty abandoned wells.
But then at one point, Sean is like, I don't know if I want to find the body.
And he says it like 3 times. And then the last time he says it, he's like, and then I had a profound thought.
I suddenly have the same feeling that I imagine investigators like Carl Sims and Mike Rising must have had for years after coming up with no results from their searches. Feeling like you could be so close, only to be disappointed again and again. But also a pretty profound thought hit me at this very moment too. Something that would make me question what I was even doing at this lake in the first place.
I'm like, dude, that's not that fucking profound, A. And then B, like, why are you even doing this? Like, nobody's asking you to do this. This isn't your job. You just decided to do this. And now you're like, I don't want to come to a conclusion because it's going to be hard to tell his mom. That's like the kind of thing you should probably be thinking about before you start in.
Yeah.
On this whole thing.
Like, nobody wants to find a body, to be right.
When it started off, you know, I was like, oh, okay, this might be cool. This might be one of those immersive things that, like, if you're on a road trip and you're going to be in the car for like 8 hours, you just like kind of lose yourself in this case and like all the ins and outs and twists and turns. And it's like a very satisfying narrative, but it just, so many red herrings, so many details that after a while, it just got kind of frustrating. And then at times things were kind of unclear. It would get boring, even though it seemed like there were things that were happening, but it was just so hard to kind of understand what it all meant that it didn't really land.
Yeah. I think as an exercise in stirring up interest in the case, this probably does a pretty good job. Because there are things there to go, I'm thinking about that. Because any cold case can really benefit from like a new light on it. But as an investigative podcast, it's going to be ultimately unsatisfying because there's no real conclusion. And endings are important, as we have said. Now, there have been a lot of great podcasts where there's no resolution to the crime, but the podcast ends up being good for various reasons, but more often than not that instead of it really being about the crime, it could sometimes be about the journey of the investigator or the podcaster or whatever. And I'm kind of wondering if that's what they were trying to do, like sticking the landing with this idea of the mother, Sean's, reluctance to hurt her, whatever. And if they had sort of fleshed out a kind of relationship throughout the podcast, that might have worked better as an ending. And again, I don't know if this is what they're going for here. And the mom shows up throughout the series, like in recurring interviews and whatnot. But if that had been a subplot or had been recognizable that that's more of a callback as opposed to a pronouncement, then maybe that lands differently at the end, but I'm not certain.
Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at Tito'sVodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
At Ashley, you'll find colorful furniture that brings your home to life. Ashley makes it easier than ever to express your personal style with an array of looks in fun trending hues to choose from earth tones to vibrant colors to calming blues and greens. Ashley has pieces for every room in the house in the season's most sought-after shades. A more colorful life starts at Ashley. Shop in store or online today. Ashley, for the love of home.
This season, Instacart has your back to school, as in they've got your lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. They've got your supplies like backpacks and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually mentions a huge project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So apologize to your parents, then download the Instacart app for delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get free delivery on your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof like Allbirds or Magic Spoon, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is the businesses behind the business making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And here's the not-so-secret secret. The Shop Pay feature boosts conversions up to 50%. That means way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. Shopify will help you make sure your commerce platform is ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Pandora, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Pandora to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/Pandora.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Drowning Creek? Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for this podcast?
I'm thumbs down. I really struggled with this podcast to follow the narrative. There was so much information and it was all there. There was information on everything. But for me, what that ended up doing was making it really hard to figure out what I needed to focus on and to actually retain the important details of this story because it was just extremely dense. The writing, I think, was more geared towards like a magazine article or like, a true crime book. And so I think that for me made it, again, a little bit hard to follow the story. But the thing is, this case is now getting a ton of attention because I went and looked it up because I wanted to kind of pull out some of the key facts after I listened to this and just read like a quick synopsis. And there's renewed focus on this case and there's renewed interest in this case. And now there's people with a GoFundMe for this case. So I think in that regard, this podcast is a positive thing. I think it was just too long and would have benefited from some trimming and streamlining of the way that the story was told because there's an interesting story there. It just didn't come through for me. So unfortunately, I am thumbs down.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for Drowning Creek?
Yeah, I'm a thumbs down too. I'll just say that this podcast has problems, but I think the investigation that went into it really dug up a lot of information. A lot of it didn't really matter, but I think there's a lot of things that could potentially be chalked off to first time around kind of things, like not really quite grasping what sort of the nut of the story is, trying to keep in all these things that come up, even though they don't really make a whole lot of difference to the actual narrative, making comments or speculating on things that maybe don't make a ton of sense. But I think with the right lessons learned from it, I wouldn't be opposed to listening to his second podcast if those kinds of adjustments are made. That being said, I'm kind of a medium thumbs down, but still a thumbs down.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I agree with the points that both of you made. I'm going to go thumb sideways on this because I really respect the journalism part, the digging. I just don't feel like that was necessary for the listener experience to get all that we did. Laura's right. This is really great for digging up, new information and advancing a new investigation into this cold case. And Toby's right that it went places that it didn't necessarily need to go. There was some material in the last episode that I thought probably could have come out earlier. But look, when it's nonfiction, you have to play the hand that you're dealt, right? But the way you do that is you have to choose which cards you're going to lay down in what order. And I feel like maybe that there was a kind of thing that could have maybe been better here. But as far as a listening experience, can I say you guys need to rush right out and download this podcast? I don't know. I think there might be something else better suited for you, but thumbs sideways.
Wow. I'm thumbs down. I understood this podcast better from the intro that I read about it than when I actually listened to it. I was so confused the entire time I was on this podcast. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know who I was listening to. There was some unintelligible tape in the podcast that I just couldn't hear the people. There were some interesting moments, but I wasn't sure why they were interesting. There seemed some moments where our host, Sean, was like, oh, wow. And I was like, why? I honestly didn't understand. And I really felt for, the victim's mother here. And granted, I'm sure, she's very happy this case has been advanced by this reporting, and that's great. But as a listener experience, not good. So yeah, I can't give it a thumbs up. I was confused and it meandered, and there's some reporting here that should not have been included because that's what editing is for. So yeah, thumbs down for me for Drowning Creek. All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, I have to ask Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
We do. You guys are going to love this one. It's a combo. It's a dog and some fish.
Love that.
This comes to us from Lisa Stella in Australia, one of our Patreon subscribers. Lisa says, hello, Crime Writers. Many thanks for continuing to provide insightful commentary and thoughtful critiques. I truly appreciate and sincerely rely on all of your points of view across the ever-expanding true crime offerings. Please find attached a photo of my gorgeous aquarium fish, Cheeky and Chips. Just don't tell them they're being catfished for this segment.
Nice.
I've also included a photo of my previous cat of the week, my beagle Reggie,
Nice.
who loves to sit back on our couch at night like a little old man and watch the fish tank antics while I listen to CWO, of course.
I love that.
I love the picture. I love the fish. I love the dog just sitting there like, hey, look at those fish.
I love animals
Pass
watching
me
animals.
a vape.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
You can see all these photos in our newsletter
That's
every
right.
week.
Sign
Cat
up.
of
It's
the week,
free.
Cat of the
It's
week.
so fun.
Go to crimewriterson.com. Leave us your email.
All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you and pitch their animals to be pet of the week, of course, they can email us at crimewriterson@gmail.com or put them in our Facebook group. But if they want to get you on social media, how can they find you?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Twitter and Instagram.
Tell you, Ball, folks want to find out more about your new podcast, Rip Current. How can they find you on social media?
At Toeyball NH.
And Kevin Flynn, how can you be found?
I'm squatting at Kevin P. Flynn.
You can find me everywhere at Reb Lavoie. You can follow the show everywhere at Crime Writers On, but mostly we encourage you to join our Facebook group. Find us on Facebook, hit join the group. We'll let you in if you literally know any one of the four of our names. Get episodes early and ad-free and everything else we make at patreon.com/partnersincrime-media. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the very tall and smart Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this show is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where our mothers also frequently clean up our messes. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Can I tinkle real quick?
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Sorry. I don't want.
I don't know. Can you?
Partners in Crime Media.
Lemon, lime, and a drop of cherry make a simple Shirley. But what happens when Tito's handmade vodka reveals this sweet sipper's dirty secret? Stir up a Tito's Dirty Sherlock and crack the case with Tito's at titosvodka.com. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.